some practical things that I do when I start feeling just kind of that sense of overwhelm is coming. I have this visual reminder that Jesus needs to be number one in my life and that I need to be spending time in my Bible. And then right underneath that is my husband. And am I spending quality time with my husband? And then under that is my children. So I list all of my boys by name as a reminder to pray for them.
Welcome. It's the Colorado Homeschool Podcast, interviewing experts, parents, graduates, all here to help you navigate this incredible journey called homeschooling. And if you're looking for resources, tips, and help, go to check.org. You'll find what you need. In the meantime, subscribe, follow along.
Well, hello, welcome. We are so excited to have another podcast with you. And I'm really excited because it's not just anybody. We love all of our guests, but this woman also happens to be a friend, somebody I get to work with. And Brandee Gillham and her husband, Roy, are ranchers, and we're going to hear a little bit about that. But let me just tell you a little bit about her testimony. She left the teaching collegiate anatomy in order to be a homeschool mom. She's got 4 boys, one of which is in heaven. She encourages others to not waste the time that God gives them and redeem that. I love that. I agree. I feel the sand through the hourglass going. Time is just so fleeting. And I really love that her deepest prayer is to raise her boys to be warriors for Christ. I love that so much. She left off when I asked her for a bio, any of the stuff that she does. She's a rancher. They live on this family farm that is generational. You can tell us about that, Brandee. She also has her hands in so many things. She still teaches anatomy classes. She homeschools, obviously, and she's the Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference coordinator, which is an amazing job. I don't know how you do it all. You wear quite a lot of hats. So, Brandee, welcome. We're so glad you're here with us today.
Well, Kashia, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to just chat with a friend today.
Oh, that's how I feel. I hope that you will all feel that way about Brandee. She really is. You're so personable and great. I love it. Well, so, Brandee, let's get started. Tell us a little bit about your homeschool journey, where you're at in the journey now, and maybe how you got started in homeschooling.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, just a quick background. Roy and I have been married for 22 years now. And like you said, Kashia, we've been blessed with 4 sons. 3 of those boys we still get to steward earthside here. 1 we have deposited in heaven. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. And we are ranchers. We are 4th generation cattle ranchers. My husband also loves raising horses. We have a family leather business, which is part of kind of our homeschooling journey. And I do wear quite a few hats. Part of that really, Kashia, boils down to the fact that when I was little, people would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, all of it. I want to do all of the things.
I relate to that.
That's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to do all the things.
That's so cute.
With joy. And, our life lends to this beauty of doing so much of it together. Chores together, cooking together, cleaning together, school together, ranch work together, all of it. Honest to goodness, about 2 hours ago, I did not look anything like this. I was out milking a cow who had just calved, and which was again, I honestly had been praying. I'm like, Lord, please don't let her calve today, which we're not in calving season right now. But I literally was out milking a cow, not because I wanted to, but because they actually get mastitis if we don't, these dairy cows. So anyhow, let's get back to homeschooling. But that is my life.
I'm such a city girl. I have no idea what you're talking about, really. No, except for I do relate to that from the mother. I understand that, but nothing about cows. Sorry. Yeah, girl, you're amazing, if you ask me.
Or crazy. Amazing, crazy. They sound very close to one another. That might be the real reality, Kashia.
I love it. So how did you ask
was about how did homeschooling begin?
Right.
And honestly, so this goes back to kind of some hard parts of my testimony, but I was teaching collegiate anatomy. It took Roy and I actually 35 months to get pregnant with our oldest son. And there was kind of this unwritten, but yet verbal agreement with my husband that as soon as the last child is in school, I get to go back to work. That was the deal. I'll stay at home, raise the babies. But as soon as we're done, raising them to get to public school, then I'm going to go back to work. Well, little did I know, the Lord has this delightful sense of humor that he was like, well, I'm going to show you what work looks like. And it's different than what you imagine. So, fast forward to our oldest son is getting ready for kindergarten. And about 6 or 7 months before he started kindergarten, I was actually diagnosed with cancer. So I went through 6 months of chemotherapy. I finished my last round on August 5th. And on August 26th, our oldest son, Jake, started as a fourth generation Pete's Bulldog. I mean, I still have the chalkboard sign that, everyone is so excited for Jake to start in public school. And I was like every mom. I was like crying, Matt's crying in the backseat. We're all crying and thinking this is the worst idea ever, because it was the worst idea ever at that moment. And what was interesting is during that, so I was super sick. Like, it was not on my heart or mind to start our homeschooling journey. But as the school year kept going on, and I was that mom that was like there at the school as many times as they would let me volunteer, 3 times a week. It was absurd. But the Lord started to lay on my heart Deuteronomy 6:5-7, which I didn't know was like the homeschooling mantra.
It is the homeschool verse.
Like, I didn't know that at that time. So this is like, ignorance in action.
Yeah.
But just as a quick reminder, Deuteronomy 6:5-7 says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. And I kept thinking, if he's away from me all day, how in tarnation am I actually going to be able to do these things with him?
It's a valid question.
I asked Roy, I said, honey, can you just pray about it? Just be thinking about this. And he's like, why would we do this? There's a perfectly good school 2 miles away. And I'm like, I don't know, but I really feel like the Lord is laying this on my heart to start homeschooling our kids. So we fast forward just a few months and we go to our first Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference in June of 2014. And Roy captures the vision of home discipleship through home education at the conference. And since then, we have never turned back. We've never regretted it. And we actually just launched our oldest son into college. He's doing dual enrollment. So we're only like a few days into this, but he is not really a traditional route because he is skipping all of the prerequisites, not because he actually tested out of them, but because philosophically he disagrees that he needs them at the college level. So this son of mine, Unique, he is a brilliant child. He really is. And I don't say that just because I'm his mom, but because he really is. But he's smart enough to know he doesn't need college. He just wants to take a few classes. So he's a kid that could get his master's or PhD, and he's opting for a certificate so he can just take the classes he wants to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So anyhow.
I love that, though. But that is exactly why I love homeschooling. It's so custom and unique.
It is. It is. So, yeah, really grateful that the Lord has called us to homeschooling, and we've been doing it for quite a little while now.
Nice. I love that. And I really love what you just said. And this is a whole, we need to have a podcast on how do you get dads to get the vision? Because it's so often the mom driving it and the dad is, he's working, he's supportive, but how do you get him to capture that vision of this is amazing and this is a great use of our time, a good use to disciple our children. I love that. So that's another maybe repeat. Okay.
Right. Later down the road.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into our theme. We're talking about this month, we're really trying to focus on burnout, overwhelmed, and I think it's just part of our culture now. The anxiety is higher. People find themselves getting burned out and overwhelmed. So we wanted to have you on because you already sort of hinted at it, but a lot of your life has been, in my opinion, overwhelming. And so tell me about your situations. Have you been in that experience of feeling like this is just too much for me? You mentioned cancer, and what things have you gone through and how have you dealt with it, Brandee?
Sure. Well, it's an interesting question. And as we discussed earlier, Kashia, sometimes I don't feel qualified to discuss this topic because I am one that, as it keeps piling up, it doesn't necessarily burn me out. But what I think it really does is it burns my family out. And that has a great impact, though, then on me. So that doesn't mean that like the hard things haven't been hard. It's just that seeing when it impacts my core group of people, that's when I get, somewhat either discouraged or overwhelmed. And, it's an interesting journey because with homeschooling, we have this amazing amount of flexibility, but I have to be really cautious in how I guard my time. So, as far as some like practical things that I do when I start feeling just kind of that sense of overwhelm is coming or kind of a wave is crashing, I literally have right here in front of my computer where I work all the time, like a cascade of importance. So, at the very top of it, I have this visual reminder that Jesus needs to be number one in my life and that I need to be spending time in my Bible. And I know that sounds real. Like, duh, we do that as Christians. But it's just a good reminder like, hey, Brandee, have you checked off the first thing off the list first? And then right underneath that is my husband. And am I spending quality time with my husband? And the answer to that is always not enough, according to him. But it does show that cascade. And then under that is my children. So I list all of my boys by name, one as a reminder to pray for them. And as we alluded to earlier, so I have 3 sons I get to still steward Earthside, but my youngest son, Ben, died on June 27th, 2021. And part of our homeschooling journey became how do I do it while I am grieving so intense? And that is probably when I have been and am still most overwhelmed, is when those waves of grief come crashing in big waves and in small waves and in the small ripple effects in and out of our homeschooling ebb and flow. That's just, but I actually, by having it on the list, which I know sounds weird, it gives myself grace to say, you need to make sure that you're spending time still processing that, still leaning into the Lord in your lament, but also reminding the moments of joy that we have in the here and now.
So,
And
can you clarify? You said by having it on the list, are you saying you have Ben on the list?
I do. Ben
Oh,
is
okay.
still on the list, but it's
Yeah.
also like in parentheses, grief is on the list as well.
Okay.
To say like,
I
you've got to give your self
Yeah.
space to do that.
I love that. And I love everything you just said, Brandee, because I think that's what sanctification is kind of remind me what I already know, Lord. Like hopefully, if you're walking with the Lord, you read the Bible. I've read the Bible, the whole Bible, and continue to do so. But we get to that point where it's like, I didn't arrive. I am being sanctified. So I do need that reminder. Okay, have I been at Jesus's feet? My husband is next. And by the way, next month, come back to the podcast because that's what we're talking about is how you prioritize your family. Exactly what you just said. I love it. God, it's so good how he works those things. Well, how did you do that? Because I love that you're saying, well, it doesn't really overwhelm me, but the grief has been overwhelming. And I think people can relate to that because sometimes I hear people talk about anxiety and like panic attacks, and I go, I don't get you. I don't understand it. But I do understand being immobilized by grief and that kind of thing. So however you would define it, when we get stuck,
Yeah.
the process to move forward, because that's what God
Mhm.
wants us to do, right? How did you
Yeah.
do that when you found yourself there? Because
Yes.
Ben was the baby, so you had
Mhm.
kids that you had to school at this point.
Yeah. Well, and it has impacted us and it will forever impact us. One
Yeah.
of the things that we say is that and I don't say this to constrain people, but when it comes to particularly losing a child, it's life with no parole. We don't get out of this grief until heaven. And then it's going to be glorious and it's going to be wonderful because it will be Jesus and all of those that we have loved and lost. But so in the early days, one of the things I often say is that we weren't designed to live with death, disease, and destruction. And therefore, that's why we can't understand it. And that is why we get overwhelmed. The Lord designed the Garden of Eden so that we would just be there in the tree of life. But we weren't supposed to eat of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And because we have that now, we have more knowledge of good and evil being death, disease, and destruction. We don't understand it. We don't comprehend that. And again, that was kind of a rabbit trail. But the reality is, like, when the first few weeks after Ben died, I mean, we were making really, really hard decisions, things like picking out a casket for your child is
Ugh,
not something
it's
that
the
you're trying
worst. Yeah.
to process, and like the financial costs of those things. I mean, those were big decisions. But I remember the first day I tried to go back to school, so I have a classroom set up downstairs just because it's good for me to have a place and space for us to do that. And I remember going down there and I started, trying to do our schedule, our rhythm, and I couldn't stop crying. And I just said, boys, I'm really sorry.
Mm.
Today's not the day. We're not starting yet again. And even today, so 4 years later, there's this thing that Ben used to do when he would get up to. So we do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I know that there's like this interesting thoughts on the Pledge of Allegiance, but really I want to raise my boys to be patriots, to respect the American flag, to respect America, be grateful for what God has done. So we do the Pledge of Allegiance still. But Ben used to do this thing where he would sit up from being cross-legged and stand up funny, kind of like he could like balance on his tippy toes and then run over, and then he would run to my chair and stand beside me and put his little hand on the heart just as a 2-year-old. Like he knew that rhythm. Well, even today during the Pledge of Allegiance, like my heart got a little tighter just because I thought, man, and so it is like there's still these small moments of, overwhelm that are just hard, that we just kind of battle through. And, we're thankful for the time we have, but we recognize that the time was shorter than we wanted is really what boils down to.
Well, we were talking about this beforehand. Like, there is no way to put us in a bubble. I mean, I think some people think you can. You can just live in this perfect little protected bubble. But God uses those really hard things and the painful things for the benefit of others too. So, wow. So you mentioned routine and how the flag, but I heard you also say flexibility. So there's sort of a give and take. How do you find that balance? Because life must go on, right? So where's the I guess is it yeah, you answer. How do you do that? The balance between your routine and the flexibility that thankfully God's grace gives us.
So I would kind of outline that, Kashia, for some practical tips for many homeschooling families. So some things I needed to do was to actually put Bible reading within our school day. And I know that's very common for Christian homeschooling families, but I needed to plug it in there. It was almost like I was just bringing the boys in closer to me to say, hey, this is what we're doing. And so that's a practical tip. Like, I think a lot of mamas struggle with, well, at least my little sinners that I gave birth to, they jump on your face in the morning and they're like, Mom, what's for breakfast? They're not like, Mom, would you like some Bible reading time to start your day? It's like I have practical, first world issues of hunger. Can you please feed my little tummy? So I kept thinking, because it really bothered me, honestly, that I was having a hard time getting my own personal Bible time. It's different now, but I do think, integrating that into my school day was a rhythm and a routine that really helped us. I also only plan school 1 week at a time. There are some mamas that plan out like the whole year, and I'm thinking, what happens if you get off?
And you're constantly behind the pressure of that. No, yeah.
So I only do it 1 week at a time, and I
Mhm.
do check in with my husband because ranching requires flexibility.
Right.
It absolutely does. Like
Calves.
today,
Yes.
I was going along just fine on my happy little school checklist, and Roy calls me. He's like, "Hey, babe, your cow calved," and I'm like, "God, not on the list today." But there's also this beauty of flexibility, so I
Yeah.
try to capture that time with the boys, plan, but again, 1 week at a time is what works best for our family because we have a ton of interruptions. But like, if you have a toddler, you have created an interruption, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It's life.
Um, and I do think we all get out of balance and out of rhythm, and I don't really feel like balance exists. I think we have this grand illusion that when, the two sides of the scale are perfectly in balance, then everything will feel better. But the reality is like that, I don't think that will ever happen.
Right.
I
Not on
do
this side of eternity, right?
absolutely not. But I do feel like better can exist. Like where it's not so completely out of balance, where it's so offset, but we could say like, hey, this is a little bit more manageable for
And
my
also
family.
4 seasons, right? I mean,
Yes,
it's definitely fluid, right?
absolutely. Yep.
Calving season being one, the fair in your world being another, conference.
The conference became a season. For certain, it was a season. It's
Yes.
I have
Yes.
never taken that much time off of school since I began. So we do year-round homeschooling.
So did I. Yes.
And one of I probably started that selfishly though, because I thought if I give them 3 months off, it's going to be really hard to come back in the fall.
Yeah.
So I think I did it maybe
Structure.
selfishly. Yeah. Whereas like, you know, I know the teacher they have to come back to in the fall if we take this much time off. So let's never take a break. But that's not really true. We just never
Right.
took that really, really long
Right.
break. We just would do 2 weeks and then take a week off. And, it was super flexible.
Yes.
And I never struggled getting days in,
Yeah.
to meet the state requirements. So,
I recommend that.
yeah.
I tell people all the time that I love the year-round calendar because it gives you flexibility to go on vacation, have breaks,
Yes.
pivot if you need to, because that's what, a lot of homeschooling is. And even in the summer, it doesn't have, I'm not encouraging anybody to stay sitting at a desk doing book work for 8 hours. It's just silly. No matter, I don't even care. Even in college, I don't think that that's real. Well, maybe for some degrees, lower year being one, but in general, be flexible and give yourself some grace. So, and that's what I'm hearing you say is grace, 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 grace. So good. And that reminder. So, well, can you think about a time that, well, no, let me go back. I want to talk about the mom because I talk to a lot of new homeschool moms and maybe they haven't hit a major trial, but they're just overwhelmed with homeschooling in general. So do you have some tips that you would give them just from a basic, like you're just getting started, here's some good application for you?
Well, one of the most important things I always tell anyone who's starting homeschooling is you and your husband need to sit down and figure out why you are doing it.
Mhm.
You must have a vision because when, not if, but when it gets hard, when John 16:33 comes to life in your homeschooling journey, when in this world you will have trouble, in this homeschooling journey, you will have trouble, but take heart. I've overcome the world. You need to be able to look back at that vision. You need to be able to say, okay, why are we doing this? Because when you anchor in that why, you don't doubt why you're doing it anymore, even when it's hard. And so that is one of my most important tips I always share with people is you've got to figure out why you're doing it and write it down to say, like, this is our vision for what we want to do. So you have something to look back on. So that's our step number one. Definitely be praying about it together. You and your spouse be praying about what homeschooling looks like. And then so I was actually a public school teacher for one very, very long year. Didn't like that. Went to the collegiate level. I did, and I do enjoy teaching at the collegiate level. But being trained as a teacher did not help me at all in being a homeschool mama. People are like, "Oh, so you're qualified?" I'm like, "Yeah, no. I had to unlearn all the things they taught me of what it should look like." Um, so I think, but there are some things as far as making sure that you've prayed about each child and learning how they like to learn and how you like to teach them. And that takes time. So just give yourself grace to give yourself time. So a practical tip I have is don't buy the $800, $900 all-in-one curriculum package because it's a huge investment and you feel super committed because you've committed so many finances to it. So I really recommend just kind of picking and choosing a few things, find used curriculum if you can, to just get started. For those with toddlers and nursing babies, like that throws everything upside down. You need to think about containment of the small people. So I,
That's so true. Yeah.
I had one of those like big playpens that I would just, put fresh toys in. But you cannot be worrying about the toddler destroying the kitchen
Right.
while you're
Right.
sitting at the table. So, healthy containment of the small humans is a really good idea. Working with nap times can be super helpful. And you do need to manage your minutes. That's another thing that I really encourage homeschool families to do. Because some people are pretty good at wasting time and some people are really good at using time. So you need to manage your minutes well. So another practical tip is to teach your children that when they get stuck, they don't stop. They move on and recognize like mom will come back and help me with this, but I can keep working on other things. A lot of kids, when they get stuck, they just stop. But that's an important skill to teach kids. So one of my sons right now, I'm working on algebra 2 with, and the other one we're working on reading. So it's, this huge
So
dichotomy.
different. Right.
But they both know that like, if I get stuck on this, I need to keep doing the next thing and mom's going to come back and help me. So, as families grow, that's a really helpful tip, I think I would share.
Yeah. You're giving lots of great nuggets. And I didn't add this to your long list of credentials, really, Brandee, because you're really the expert. She taught and is teaching a lot of the introduction to homeschool seminar, and she did the nuts and bolts. And so much of this content is just really, really spot on. I really love the vision statement exhortation, because I say the same thing all the time and people think, why is that the most important thing? But you were right. Without vision, the people perish, that you're going to fall because there's going to be things. But I want to go back to what you were talking about that I feel like really we should unpack is the day that you said to your boys, yeah, we're not ready. We're not going to do school. You've mentioned that. And then you also said you were lamenting that you were not feeling like you had your Bible time. And I love that you then incorporated it into school, because that's what homeschooling is. It's holistic. It's you and your kids and your husband coming together, right? Like, it's not just you being like some lecture, like traditional school, the lecturer in the front, but it's all together. So do you have some more examples of how that has worked because it's not necessarily the schooling that I hear overwhelms families, it's the other stuff. It's I don't have time to get in the Word myself. It's the dishes are a mess. The kid is crawling everywhere, whatever. But do you have more examples? Because you just naturally gave me some of those that I think we should hone in on.
Sure. You mean of how I integrated the things that I felt like I was missing into our homeschooling day? Okay.
Like priorities of life, not just like the phonics plan.
Sure. Well, it really boils down to flexibility. And I am a planner. I am a minute by minute practically planner. That's the way I would love my life to go. And the Lord gave me a rancher as a husband to say, here, I'm going to use this life to sanctify you, is really what it boils down to all the time. So some of the other things we do that it's not, so I will have my oldest son read history to his younger brother. And it's not because I'm trying to burden him. It's because I want to see them capture time together, where it's really about building healthy relationships. I think a lot of large families, for example, they'll do a lot of pairing, an older with a younger to kind of help with the management of the people, but it also is for relationship building. So that's one of the things that I really love to do. We also put our devotions within school time, our character training in school time. And it's not that, again, we're not working on character training all the time, but it definitely got integrated into that, just kind of that regular rhythm of school time. And they do help each other. So my son that's a senior in high school will help his brother who's a sophomore, in his work. And again, I love that we kind of integrate all of those things. But there are many times when my husband will call me and say, I need your help.
Right now, bring the boys. Yeah.
Yes, and bring the boys. Like, we're going to get saddled up right now, and I need everyone to go do this thing. We've got a really tough issue going on right now. Come and help. And that, what's amazing, particularly in the life that we've lived, is our boys rise up to the occasion. They will step into those. So flexibility is required because life gets interrupted all the time. Our plans and purposes are not the Lord's. And we try to be obedient to what he's called us to, but flexibility has got to be the way of life, really, in homeschooling.
Yeah. It's the open hand, right? Because
Mhm.
and that's what I was just saying. Like you still need that structure, you still need a plan, you need to have a vision. We're still moving forward with a purpose, but we just trust the Lord and there's freedom in that, right?
Yes,
So
definitely.
I
Mhm.
hate that this went so quick, so quick. We're gonna link Brandy's podcast. It's what's the name of the podcast, Brandee?
It's called Home, Heritage, and Hope Podcasts.
Yes. And I just listened to her opener. It was so good. You're going to love what Brandee has to say. We just got a little tease of it. Thank you for being here. We're going to close the interview as we do with everybody and ask you to share your favorite, the best homeschool tip. The best is a really terrible qualifier, but a really good homeschool tip related to what we talked about or not. You already
Okay.
shared some good ones.
Okay. Well, I would say related to being overwhelmed, that you will never regret the time you invest in your children. So no matter
Mhm.
what that looks like,
So
however your
true.
homeschooling journey is going, you'll never regret the time you invest in your children. So
Mhm.
invest well.
Wow, that's a great concluding statement. That was so good. Well, thank you
Good.
for being with us, Brandee. And guys, you got to follow her. Get on her podcast. You'll see her at all the Check events, certainly at the conference. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today, Brandee.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. The Colorado Homeschool Podcast is a ministry of Christian home educators of Colorado. We have been motivating parents to disciple the next generation by embracing home discipleship that is Christ-centered, parent-directed, and free from government control. We invite you to join us in this mission. If you want to support homeschooling in Colorado, go to check.org/donate. In the meantime, share this with your friends and make sure you subscribe. That really helps us. Thank you.
Brought to you by thepodcastupload.com, empowering faith-driven voices.